Good morning, everybody. Pastor Andy here, coming at you live again for another weekly Bible story for all of you kiddos and Bible lovers out there. I hope you're doing very well this morning. It's good to see you, and I hope your week was good, and I hope your next week is gonna be even better, even better. Lot going on out there in the world right now, huh? Y'all heard about this whole thing called an election? I think. What's that? That's something your parents talk about, and everyone, and maybe your grandma or grandpa throws something at the TV every now and then about the election. It's cool. Y'all don't have to worry about that. Y'all are kids. The good thing about being a kid is that you don't have to worry about things like the election or what's another thing you don't have to worry about because you're a kid? Mortgages. Don't have to worry about a mortgage. I bet you don't know what a mortgage is. I barely know what a mortgage is. I think a mortgage might be a place where they get people ready for a funeral. Is that a mortgage? Sounds about right to me. What else do you not have to worry about so much as a kid? Going to work. You don't have to go to work. You get to go to school, which is kind of like going to work, and you have chores when you get home. So it's kind of like you got double work, but you don't got to go to work when you're a kid. So that's cool. Oh man, that's the best. Not having to go to work. What else? Money. Do you have to learn about money? Do you have to worry about money? Not really, but maybe a little bit. Maybe you have an allowance or something. Maybe you have lunch money that you have to keep track of. Maybe even you are in charge of putting some money in the plate at church or something. So maybe you do have some ways that you have to handle or deal with money in your daily routine, right? Any of y'all out there? How do you handle money? And this is actually a really good time for us to talk about this, right? So I want you to stop for a moment and talk with your moms, dads, uncles, aunts, grandparents, and all that stuff. And I want you to ask them some very important stuff about money. What is it that we use money for? Okay, that's one thing. All right. And how do we use money to honor God? Those are two very big questions right there. First, what do we use money for? Okay. And I guess a better question is, what are our priorities around money as a family? What do we think is really important to spend our money on as a family? That's an even better question. And how do we use our money to honor God, or how do we use our money to live out our faith? I want to give y'all a couple minutes, Mom and Dad, because these are pretty big questions to talk with your kiddos about. And we're going to pause and come back here in a couple minutes. So I hope you have a good discussion. So how did your discussion go? Good. Money, it's a very important thing. Money is how we show our priorities in life, is how we spend our money. Now, what is a priority? A priority is what we consider to be important. What is important in our lives? Well, certainly our families are important, right? What else is important? Our pets, our animals, they are a priority. Our brothers and our sisters are priorities. We have to put food on the table. We got to eat to live, right? So that's a priority. You got to have gasoline in the car. That's a priority. But what else? Our faith. Our faith is a huge priority. In fact, it should be our greatest priority. Following Jesus is kind of should be the biggest thing in our lives, right? So it's important. Well, today we are going to learn a little bit about what Jesus has to say about the subject of money, specifically about giving money to God. You know, when we were at church and we would pass around that plate and people put money in it, that's called an offering, okay? And that is how we support the work of the church. Okay, so what does the church do? Well, the church has to keep lights on and all those things, right? Church also gives money to people who need it, if they're sick or if they're having a really tough time. And so the money we put into the plate at church helps all those things to happen, right? Makes a lot of sense. Well, here's a kind of a bigger thing. When we put money in the plate at church, we're not actually giving money to the church, okay? Even though the church uses it. We're giving money to God because God is the person God is in charge of the church. And God is in charge of our lives, right? And because we love God, we want to give God every part of ourselves. And so when we put money into the hands of God, okay, that's a way of us showing that we trust God, to take our money and our gifts and use it in a way that will allow wonderful things to happen. So we're going to listen to one of Jesus' stories today. And it's about faith and it's about money and how they can be tied together. It's the story of the widow's offering. One day, Jesus sat down outside a temple and taught the disciples about how to share their money. Do you see that rich man in his fancy dancy robes? You see him? He is so fancy. You see that guy? You see this man in the fancy robes? Jesus asked his disciples. They looked around and saw him and said, "Yeah, we see him. He is one snazzy dude. And he's all twirling around in his robes, and he's showing how important he is, and he's got jewelry hanging everywhere, and that's pretty cool. And he looks like someone very important, right?" And he saw them watching him and saw him showing off and looking at how important and rich he looked. And he thought to himself, wow, I must be so amazing. I'm the most special rich guy in the world. Yeah, so he thinks he's pretty cool. Now the man in the fancy robes stopped in front of an offering plate that was outside of the temple. A temple's a lot like a church, and the offering plate's where they would put their offering. And he slowly reached into his giant money bag, and he pulled out a big old wad of shiny gold coins worth a ton of money. Okay, like a big old, around like Halloween and stuff, you get those little bags, and they got the like gold coins that like have the wrap on it. It's actually chocolate. Yeah, that's not like this story. It's like actual gold coins, and so it's heavy and it's shiny and it's wow, it's a lot of money. And he tosses this big massive gold coins one by one into the offering plate, just so it makes a big sound every time one of these coins hits, just so everyone around him can look and see, wow, that rich dude right there, look at him, he's offering all that money to God. You talk about a generous fella, right? He knows where it's at. I bet we can make that guy something important in this community. I mean, he's giving us a lot of money. He's a cool dude, right? And he's yelling, "It is time for me, my friends, to give to the poor because I am so generous. Look at all of this money. This shiny, shiny money that I'm giving to you poor people out there, all of you poor ladies wearing your rags and your poor men that haven't had baths in weeks and just have flies just buzzing all around you. You're so poor and you need so much money. And here I am, just giving you all of my money because I'm so wonderful. That's what he said. And he sounded just like that. And as he kept on dropping the coins in the box, they made loud clangs, and everyone saw. Now Jesus asked his disciples another question while this was happening. He said, he pointed over to another side of the temple, and he said, do you look over there? Do you see that poor old woman that's coming up over there, that's walking over there? Jesus whispered the question because he didn't want to scare the woman away because she was very shy. And she looked this way and that way, very shy. And she tried to hide in the crowd. And she bent over the money plate and very quietly put in just a couple of little pennies. You know, a penny? One of those little tiny, tiny copper coins, only worth about a cent. And she was shy, and she was almost kind of embarrassed because her offering that she was giving God, she could only give a very little bit, unlike the rich man. Her 2 coins barely made a sound as she dropped them in. And the old woman reached her hand back into her pocket to try to grab more, but it was empty because she had given all she had had. And quietly, the poor woman shuffled away. Did you notice her? Asked Jesus. The man in fancy robes gave just a little of his riches, and he showed off a lot because he was very rich. So even though he gave a lot, it wasn't that much, but he made a big show of it. But that old woman over there, she gave only 2 pennies. The only 2 pennies she had left in the world. And she didn't say a thing about it. She was even kind of embarrassed about it. She was very quiet. She shared everything she had. Which one of the 2 do you think gave the most? The rich man or the old woman? And they looked and they said, the old woman. She gave the most because she gave everything she had. And Jesus said, that's right. Because it takes greater faith to give when it hurts than to give all the money in the world than to give a huge amount of money if you have all of it in the world. So it takes a lot more faith to give two pennies if that's all you got. Now, why is this story important? Well, it shows us something. It shows us that Jesus doesn't really care about how much money you have. He doesn't care if you're rich. He doesn't have much use for that. What Jesus cares about is faith. And what Jesus cares about is generosity. And generosity has nothing to do with how much money you give. Okay, like I can be very generous and give you $1 if that's all I have. If all I had was $1 and I give it to you, then that's extremely generous. But if I have $1,000 in my pocket and I see you and you're in trouble and I give you only $1, does that still mean I'm generous? No, it doesn't. It means I'm stingy, which is not a good thing. It takes more faith to be generous because it involves us giving away almost everything we have, or sometimes everything we have. And we put more trust in God that God is going to take care of us when we do that. And that's how, as Christians, we're called to live. We're called to live in a way that shows we trust God. Okay? So this week, I want you to think about that. I want you to think about how in my life can I be generous? Maybe it's with money, maybe it's not with money, maybe it's with your time, maybe it's with your kind words, maybe it's Oh gosh, maybe it's with your toys. You share your toys, even though you may only have a few to play with. There are many ways we can be generous. So I want you today to talk to your mom and dad and ask, how can we as a family be generous? How can we be generous? And how can we follow Jesus in showing our generosity and our faith in him? These are great questions. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's story. And I know I did. I enjoy many of these story times with you and spending them with you. And I hope you have a wonderful week this week, in a very pleasant evening, and that you have a great week at school, and that we will come back together next week for a new Bible story. Bye-bye now.